The uneasy truce at Air Canada has collapsed, shattering the fragile calm that had held the airline together for months. Tensions that had simmered beneath the surface have now erupted into open conflict, sending shockwaves through the aviation industry and raising alarm among travelers and employees alike. With the threat of a strike and lockout now looming, thousands of travelers find themselves thrust into a state of uncertainty, anxiously watching for updates that could upend their plans. Families, business travelers, and vacationers alike are left wondering if their flights will take off or be grounded indefinitely. On August 13, 2025, the Canadian Union of Public Employees, representing more than 10,000 dedicated flight attendants, issued a 72-hour strike notice. This bold move signaled their willingness to take drastic action after months of stalled negotiations and mounting frustration over working conditions. Air Canada responded swiftly, within the hour, by issuing its own lockout notice, escalating the standoff to a new level. The airline's leadership made it clear they were prepared to take a hard line, setting the stage for a dramatic confrontation. Both sides are now locked in a high-stakes public showdown, with the eyes of the nation watching closely. The clock is ticking, and a hard deadline looms for reaching a deal before operations are disrupted on a massive scale. In an effort to avoid chaos, Air Canada proposed binding arbitration, hoping to resolve the dispute without further disruption. But the union rejected this offer, standing firm in their belief that giving up the right to strike would weaken their bargaining power and silence their voices. Flight attendants argue that only direct negotiation, backed by the credible threat of a strike, can address the core issues at stake. They point to unpaid labor, stagnant wages, and the increasing demands of their jobs as problems that have gone unresolved for too long. Many feel that their dedication and hard work have not been properly recognized or compensated. The previous 10-year contract expired in 2024, leaving a void that months of talks have failed to fill. Despite repeated meetings and proposals, both sides remain far apart on key issues, and frustration continues to mount as the deadline approaches. Now, the clock is ticking toward a possible work stoppage that could ground flights nationwide, stranding passengers and costing the airline millions. The prospect of empty terminals and idle planes is becoming all too real. The fate of Air Canada and its passengers hangs in the balance, as the nation waits to see whether a last-minute agreement can be reached, or if the skies will soon fall silent. After months of intense negotiations, talks between Air Canada and its flight attendants collapsed, leaving both sides frustrated and the future uncertain. The main sticking points were pay, working conditions, and crucially, what actually counts as paid time on the job. Despite repeated meetings and proposals, the two sides failed to bridge the gap, and tensions only grew as deadlines approached. The union, representing over 10,000 flight attendants, has been clear. They want all hours worked, including the time spent preparing the cabin before passengers board and the duties performed after landing, counted as paid time. Currently, much of this work goes unpaid, with only time in the air officially recognized. For flight attendants, these unpaid hours add up, often stretching their workdays far beyond what's reflected in their paychecks. Air Canada maintains that its compensation offers are competitive and fair, but the Canadian Union of Public Employees, or QPE, argues that the airline's proposals ignore the physical and emotional toll of unpaid labor, unpredictable schedules, and the constant pressure to be available at a moment's notice. Flight attendants routinely face long, irregular hours, frequent delays, and insufficient rest between shifts. Many report feeling exhausted and burned out, with little time to recover before their next assignment. The unpredictable nature of their schedules makes it difficult to plan family time or even basic self-care, leading to growing frustration and a sense of being undervalued. The union's push for better work-life balance and more predictable scheduling has met stiff resistance from Air Canada, which insists that flexibility is essential for its operations. The airline argues that the industry's unique demands require staff to adapt to changing schedules, but for flight attendants, this flexibility often comes at the expense of their personal lives and well-being. When Air Canada proposed binding arbitration to resolve the dispute, the union rejected it, seeing it as a way to sidestep their core demands. Instead, union leaders believe that only direct action, such as strikes or public demonstrations, can force the airline to address the root issues and deliver meaningful change. For many flight attendants, this fight is about more than just pay. Decades of unresolved grievances, ranging from safety concerns to chronic understaffing, have left them unwilling to accept small, incremental improvements. They want a real overhaul of their working conditions. The union's recent strike notice is a clear signal. They're demanding fundamental changes, not just minor tweaks. They want recognition for all the work they do, and a fairer, more sustainable system for everyone. With the threat of major disruptions looming, the union has made it clear they're prepared to take bold action to achieve lasting change, not just for themselves, but for the future of the profession. At the heart of the ongoing dispute in the airline industry lies a system that many consider fundamentally unfair and outdated. Flight attendants are required to perform hours of essential, mandatory work, yet much of this time goes completely unpaid. From the moment they arrive at the airport, their responsibilities begin, but their paychecks don't reflect the full scope of their labor. According to a recent union survey, the average flight attendant puts in about 35 hours of unpaid work every single month. These hours are spent on critical tasks like pre-flight briefings, reviewing safety protocols, and conducting thorough safety checks to ensure every flight is secure and compliant. Boarding passengers, assisting with luggage, and performing safety demonstrations are all required duties, but none of these are compensated under the current pay structure. In fact, flight attendants only start earning their hourly wage when the airplane's cabin doors close, and their pay stops the moment those doors open at the end of the flight. This leaves a significant portion of their workday, sometimes hours, uncompensated. Even during lengthy tarmac delays, when passengers are anxious and require extra care, attendants are expected to manage the cabin and maintain order, but they still aren't paid their regular wage for this time. This system not only adds to their stress and fatigue, especially during irregular operations or unexpected delays, but it also impacts their morale and well-being. That's why the union's Unfair Canada campaign is pushing for change, demanding that federal labor laws be updated to guarantee that every hour worked is a paid hour, no matter where or when it happens. For flight attendants, this fight is about more than just money. It's about basic fairness, respect, and ensuring the safety of everyone on board. United, they're calling for the industry standard to change, demanding an end to unpaid labor and a future where their essential work is finally recognized and compensated. Stagnant wages are another flashpoint. Starting pay for new flight attendants has barely increased in 25 years, lagging far behind inflation. Many new hires earn less than minimum wage when unpaid hours are factored in, forcing them to take second jobs or share housing. Meanwhile, Air Canada's CEO received a $12.5 million compensation package last year, highlighting the gap between executives and frontline staff. The union wants significant wage increases, especially for new hires, to restore fairness and respect to the profession. For flight attendants, fair pay means recognition for their skills and sacrifices. The strike notice is backed by a historic mandate. 99.7% of union members voted yes, with nearly 95% turnout. This overwhelming support gives the union real leverage at the bargaining table. It signals deep frustration and unity among flight attendants who feel pushed to the brink by years of stagnant pay and rising demands. The vote is a clear rejection of the status quo and a call for meaningful change. With this mandate, the union can confidently reject arbitration and hold firm on its demands. If a strike happens, the picket lines will be strong and united. This level of solidarity is rare and powerful. It's the foundation of the union's strategy in this high-stakes fight. The pay structure in the airline industry disproportionately affects women, who make up most flight attendants. Unpaid duties like boarding and delays mean women in this field are paid for fewer hours than men in many other jobs. This systemic undervaluing of their work widens the gender pay gap and limits lifetime earnings. Unpredictable schedules and low pay also make it harder for women to balance work and family responsibilities. The union frames this fight as a matter of pay equity and social justice. They argue that fair pay for all hours worked is essential for economic justice for women. Changing this system would set a new standard for gender equality in Canadian workplaces. If a strike happens, Air Canada's network, including Rouge, would grind to a halt. Most flights would be cancelled, stranding tens of thousands of passengers and causing chaos at major airports. Air Canada says it will offer refunds, but finding alternative flights will be difficult and expensive as demand surges at competitors. Business, tourism, and cargo would all be hit hard, with ripple effects across the economy. International travelers could be stranded far from home. Hotels, tour operators, and convention centers would also feel the impact. Passengers are advised to monitor their bookings and know their rights, but widespread disruption is inevitable. The consequences would be immediate and severe. For travelers, the only certainty is uncertainty. The outcome of this dispute could reshape labor relations across Canada's airline industry. Other unions, especially at WestJet, are watching closely as their own contracts come up for renewal. If Air Canada flight attendants win pay for all hours worked, it will set a powerful precedent for others. Recent pilot wage gains have already raised the bar. Now flight attendants hope to do the same. A union victory could shift power back toward workers and raise standards industry-wide. The message, the old model of unpaid labor and low wages, is no longer sustainable. This could mark a turning point for compensation and working conditions in Canadian aviation. With strike and lockout notices in effect, several outcomes are possible. A last-minute deal could avert a work stoppage, but it would require major concessions. The federal government could intervene, appointing a mediator, or even legislating workers back on the job. If no deal is reached and there's no intervention, a strike or lockout will begin, triggering mass cancellations. The dispute could end quickly or drag on, with mounting costs for the airline and hardship for employees. This fight is about more than one contract. It's a test of labor's value in a key sector. The outcome will shape wages and working conditions for thousands and set the tone for future negotiations. However it ends, the impact will be felt by workers and travelers across Canada.